Warmly welcome you all to the exclusive discussion. Here's the special guest with us, current member of the parliament, leader of United National Party, former Prime Minister of Sri Lanka for 4 times, Honorable Ranil Wickremesinghe. What do you think about the responsibility of leadership in today's context towards the economic development of Sri Lanka?
Well, I think most of us have been irresponsible as far as economic development is concerned, because one, that we have not spent enough time on the economic side of the country, except for just coming out with different slogans. Other than that, we don't have the in-depth discussion that you would find in the UK Parliament or the Indian Parliament, and no one is interested in it. That's unfortunately the issue, because we have the three committees now. We have a Committee on Public Enterprises, Committee on Public Accounts, and the Public Finance Committee, which can be further strengthened, which can act as the Ways and Means Committee. In India, you find the discussions going on, but here there's very little interest except to take this up during amendments to financial acts or some regulation, and keep shouting about one issue or another, the government or the opposition. So I have a question mark over our capacity, because in the 1960s we had a very good parliament. We had J.R. Jayawardena, Dudley Senanayake, Felix Dias, T.B. Lankaratne, N.M. Pereira, Philip Gunawardena, even the Tamil members. So very, very good group. Even in 77, with a small number, we could debate. But today that interest is no longer there.
Yeah, thank you, sir. What do you think about the drivers for building up a policy framework, and what is the value addition from a good policy towards the economic development?
Well, to begin with, we have the Fiscal Management Responsibility Act. I mean, one of first to bring it in after New Zealand, which really sets down our policy. You have to set down the benchmarks, what the debt to GDP ratio will be, what is the deficit, how we are going to achieve it, and then that must be followed with a financial policy statement and a mid-year review. Now, those are the basic instruments we have together with the Public Finance Committee. Now, that is where the government must start working on it. So once the financial stream is there, I think we should also go in for a parliamentary budget office. We should do its independent numbers. So it's within that we have to set off a fiscal policy and a monetary policy. But that again will depend on what is the overall policy of the government. What is the economic policy you're following? Basically, is it a social market economy? It's a neoliberal economy. It's like China, a socialist market economy. And then what do you hold for the future? So according to that, you have to develop. Now, today you can see that US Congress is debating on a 3.5 trillion bill. It's going on, and even the Democratic Party is split on it. But that's the way it should work. It doesn't work that way in Sri Lanka.
As per your view, it is the prevailing current government vision and the other financial and other stuff policies drivers for making a new policy.
Yes. So what is it? I don't know what this government's vision is at the moment, except they don't want to go to the IMF, and that's going to be even the mid-year review that came today. Is I think it must have got washed to the rain, because it's very, very indistinct. But nevertheless, I feel that on the policy issue, there must be a consensus between all parties that we should have basically, if you want a country to develop, there should be a minimum of 20 years. Mr. Jayawardena always said 20. Fortunately, we went on for 17 years, and that held even during the war. But we've not done a major reform after that. 77 is far away when China was opening up. Today, we have to look at what we need for the future and agree on a 20-year plan. We can't go out of it. We can define what the rate of tax should be or what the rate of inflation is, but not on the basic items.
What are the key factors that there should be in a policy to become a successful policy in terms of terms of the period, and what measures that should be implemented in line with for the feedbacks and control of that policy?
Well, that depends. I would say it will be stability, but remember when we started in 78, the whole capital formation of 150 years had been broken up. And the Sri Lankans didn't have any capital, and we had nationalized what else the foreigners had. So we had to get money from outside. That's what we got for the major Mahavali schemes. But at the same time, we had occasion to print money. So we didn't want the Dutch disease to come in. And sometimes we were short. For instance, in 1984, 85, I remember our exports fell. So we had to make up for that. And we had to have a big increase in our armaments. So we went up, but nevertheless, even at about 20%, businesses went on. At that time, high interest rates were in fashion. It went out with the Washington consensus. No, I would say first look at where you are going, what your economy should be. I don't think, for far as Sri Lanka is concerned, that you can go very much longer with this economy or depending on apparel exports, which is limited, tourism, which is non-existent, again, foreign employment, which has also reached its peak. Tea is no longer possible. If we want to develop, we have to have a new framework. Then our fiscal and monetary policies must come within it. So what is that new framework that we are looking at? Let's decide that. And then you will have a transitional period. How do you manage the transition? Of course, we have the first part will be how do you manage the post-COVID period, which will be difficult for us. The transition that will be difficult. And then when you get results, so you have to work for 2 years plus another 7 or 8 years, and then only you'll be out of the woods. So this is, I think, in the first instance, I would look at the IMF, because you have to stabilize your foreign reserves and look at what is the safety net you can put under the people, because there have been a lot of job losses. Then how do you revive the economy? What do you do to the tourist sector? You are even unable to service the loans. So there are big issues on that, as against rupee debt. So I think first issue is to sort that out. How do you revive the private sector? Is the first issue.
Yes, sir. If the economy has downgraded in the current context, what is the root cause? So what went wrong in the past to become in this situation?
No, if it gets downgraded now, it will be because our figures are wrong. Our revenue is not up to what we decided. There's a mismatch between revenue and deficit. Secondly, the fact is that we are using the banking system to finance foreign borrowing and local borrowing. Banks are borrowing from outside and then buying the ISB. As a result, the banks can't cope with the problems here. So if you look at all the criteria, we have fallen back since 2018, 2019. That's the reason when you look at the deficit, inflation, any of those things.
Sir, as per your view, what strategies should be changed or developed in order to develop a Sri Lankan economy?
Well, Naomi, as I said earlier, yeah, we have to decide what we want to be. The Chinese have decided that. The Koreans have decided that. Japanese have decided that. ASEAN countries have decided that. We are like UK. We don't know what we want to be. We know that we can't, as I said earlier, you can't carry on with this economy. So what are the new aspects for earning foreign exchange? You all start thinking out of the box. Firstly, I think we can become a logistics center. That is why we try to develop shipping and give the East Terminal to the Japanese and the Indians, because we must get access into the Indian market. India will keep growing and their ports won't be able to handle this. We still have the edge over them. But if we get locked out of the Sagarmala project, then we lose a good source of income, and that's something after COVID we'll start building up fast. Then we have to look at developing Trincomalee. which the Indians, Japanese, and Singaporeans were interested in as a port for the Bay of Bengal. Hambantota Harbour will take another 15-20 years, but when the port system under the Belt and Road Initiative comes in the Indian Ocean, will be a better place. So the Chinese, China merchants handle that. So that's one area. Increase the amount of airlines coming in. Not now. I don't think the international air services will come into place for about another 2 years. But logistic shipping, yes, that's one thing you can move on. Then what are the industries that we can promote? Some may be semi-automated. We have to go for the fourth industrial revolution and digitalization. We can't go for either. And when we start the training institutes, now itself, recently an Indian company started off and they recruited 5,000 of our IT personnel, but those 5,000 came out of the existing firms, Sri Lankan firms. So those firms are wondering how they can find new personnel. That's not the way. You must have a surplus of people and go ahead, train them. So we have to get large companies to come in here. That's what we were working earlier, and let them adapt to their global supply chain. So it's basically a new revolution. Look at your agriculture. We have to modernize agriculture. We can come in with certain foodstuffs. We have to find. So we have to improve on our fisheries. Our cost of productions are too high. A lot of services we can go into and think of tourism newly. So once you have that, then it's a question of how is our monetary and our fiscal policy going to help that. So we must also have a stable economy. In I would say in the 1980s, as I told you, we could go up to 20% inflation. We can't go up today, 20% inflation. We have to control, not only us, any other country. So if you look at it, then look at the ways that you have to go ahead. I don't think I'll be there in the 100th year, but you will be there, Naomi. What type of Sri Lanka do you want? Just 27 years more.
Yes, sir. There's a high capital investment called Port City. So what do you think about whether we can develop Sri Lankan economy from Port City? Oh, we think that it's like incoming new idea for Sri Lanka. So what do you think about that?
Port City is actually a real estate scheme. The whole idea was that they put in that they will have people, they put up apartments for them to buy. And under the plan that the Singaporeans made for us in 2003, 2004, they said port will not be sufficient, so move out and fill this place up and have Colombo Business District. That was 200 acres, but they made it 600. And now bulk of it has to be filled by residential means. I think with the present COVID economy, the money won't come in immediately. They also feel it's going to take time. On top of that, in addition to that, we were looking at establishing a offshore center in Sri Lanka. Basically, there was scope for certain offshore activity, not all. Insurance, which was really not regulated, there are no regional centers. Things like Hindu joint families, trust, then shipping, those are the areas we could. Some of them thought that we can have numbered bank accounts. No, I don't think we can have that secrecy. But we could go in for offshore. Then also for blockchain technology and others, we could use it. So you can use it, but it would take a longer time. The problem in the offshore now is that the government has lost its credibility in regard to the economy, and they are virtually going back on the market economy. So it will take some more time. That's why we need something like a 20-year program when foreigners won't bother how the government changes, but they will come in and invest and go ahead. Change of government should not be change of basic policies.
Yes, sir. If you become a leading policymaker of Sri Lankan again, so how would you think that the Sri Lankan economy can be changed or developed?
Well, to make the changes, as I said, we'll have to have a structural reforms to open up the economy further. We must be able to integrate with the surrounding economies, India, ASEAN, Pakistan, Bangladesh. So those are the first steps. I think already we've done a fair amount of work. It's removing some of those but the barriers we have had via the tariff, like the PAL and the other ones we have imposed. So those barriers have to go off, but we have to compensate our industry with the trade adjustment policy. That's the first thing. Then identify all the barriers you can take away, and immediately a single window which will approve your policies with application within 1 month. Some countries do it within a week, but I think if you start with a month, then you can come down to a week in about 1.5 years time. So there's a lot of, then look at all the changes for logistics. But main thing is you have to start training people for any enterprise for the fourth industrial revolution. It's the question of, yeah, what are the structural changes you want? Part of it is already there on paper in the finance ministry. What is for the next? So you have to keep opening up over 10 years. How you want to do it is a matter, I think, that can change from time to time. But I would look at looking at liberalizing the whole system and also backing it up with government funding for Sri Lankans and others who can go ahead for their research and development.
We all know that Asia is rising so fast. According to you, sir, we are also a member of Asia. What do you think Sri Lanka lacking behind?
We are not modernized ourselves. We have behind. I mean, our thinking. You'll be surprised at the Chinese thinking. We'll call them capitalists. Capitalists are the worst sort. No, you have to have market. You have to go out for it. We are not talking of that. We are talking everything other than economics. So we've suffered it. If you are prepared to modernize and you are prepared to go ahead. Now we got $400 million from the MCC just to do up the traffic light system in Colombo, which they said was terrible, it was taking time, and to plan out industrial estates on the Colombo Trincomalee Highway. So what have we done with it? We came to an agreement with Japan and India to take over to handle the East Terminal. That was $500 million. We threw that away. We had LRT for nearly over $1 billion. We threw that away. Now, power is very important. So we had given one LNG plant to India, one to Japan for this western region, the developed areas, and one for China to do up Hambantota to get industries there. We have done nothing on it. We have sold our shares, government shares in one of the plants, but that is immaterial. It's not a new plant. We only sold it to a old one. So we are throwing all opportunities away. We had an agreement. We had a trade agreement with Singapore. Now we are saying we are going to reconsider. I mean, that means that's the end of any Singaporean investment. We are not going ahead with the discussion with India. We are throwing away the GSP plus. So people are wondering what is wrong with us. Many Asian countries haven't got GSP plus. We are one of the few. If the others could get it, they will take it. But we are talking of politics, and our politics is not related to how to improve the lives of the people. So with Asia, we are no longer regarded as among the top countries. When I was born, we were next to Japan. Today, when I'm talking to you, in South Asia, only Bhutan and Maldives have a lower foreign reserve than us. We have about less than 2 billion. Bhutan has about 1.2 billion, but they have a fair amount of money in Indian rupees because they sell power to India. Maldives has about 800 million. Now, Nepal has 11 billion. Afghanistan has 9 billion. Then Pakistan has 22 billion. Bangladesh, which has 0 in 71, has 48 billion. India naturally has 650 billion. So that shows how Asia regards us. If you look at those figures and what's happening now, we are out unless we get our economy correct. No one will come in. Basically, it's like a business to invest only if you look the figures are correct. You look at the balance sheet.
Yes, agreed with you, sir. And our next question is, most of developed countries believe that research and development is an integral driver of economic growth. How this apply to Sri Lankan context?
It applies to in every country. I mean, in many areas we can do development. We have the IT sector, which is brand new. Anyone can come from anywhere and do it. We have the indigenous medicine sector. At one time, we were the leading developers in tea. The TRI in Talwakale, we have lost that. So in different fields, we can start. We have enough experience. And then we must take our major universities like Moratu and Peradeniya. And to get a research we are only giving 4-year degrees. Build that up. A few more institutions which will have research, maybe a few more technological universities, but with research facilities there, not merely a 4-year degree. So that's why you take Sri Jawaharlal University. They are doing good work on pandemic. So the pandemic research center should come into Sri Jawaharlal University. Then there are private people who have, I think they've set up that nanotechnology company. We just must put more money into research.
Okay, sir. My question is, when government changes, policies changes drastically in Sri Lanka, according to you, sir, as a country, why we cannot develop long-run continuing policy? And also, sir, I would like to know your opinion about today's central bank declared 6-month roadmap contribution to the economy.
No, unfortunately, our politics is such that a lot of thinking, economic thinking, which has been rejected, is still there, that we can do everything by ourselves. We can grow all food, and if we have a tank and a paddy field, that we can all happily live thereafter without handphones or anything. So that thinking prevails still in Sri Lanka. It's now gone out of India. It went out of China. Some Chinese told me they're quite surprised at the thinking in Sri Lanka. So that affects the government, especially one of the parties. We kept this going under when President Kumanatunga took over. She changed certain policies like industrialization, but then she went ahead with more of the privatization that then was done earlier. This is a government which I thought would build on what we have done, do much better so that they can go for a second term, instead of which they reverse. Now, I do not know what exactly they are planning to. That's why there is a complete lack of economics in the parties. No one discusses it. It's only a small group. Then how do we go out? The roadmap. Well, if you want a map to get stuck in the Devanna wire, that's the best one. There's nothing new in it. But you have to look at the problem. How are we going to tackle this? If you are not going to the IMF, what is your other source? We can't tackle this by ourselves. We need assistance from outside. If you don't answer that, if you don't give your figures, actually they have not given the latest figures as far as the balance of payments and others are concerned. And if you are not direct, there's nothing, there's just a wish list. And it's a wish list that can take you at least get you stuck into the Devan now, and that's all I can say.
Yes, sir. In this century, knowledge is the power. We invest so much money on private universities, both local and foreign. What is your view on that, sir?
Not only this century, even Buddha's century, knowledge was power. Otherwise, you couldn't have brought out the Tripitaka. So remember, it's how even in the Anuradhapura times, we have put the Dagabbas up, we have built Sigiriya. It's power, knowledge. We don't understand that. No, so we have to know how to harness our knowledge and go ahead. As far as the private universities are concerned, well, I think you need it because you have so many fields which the government can't cater for. Sometimes the prices, the fees for lecturers are high. The difficult issue is medicine. So let's keep medicine aside. I think we should bring in two types of private institutions. One are the ones that are for profit. The ones that are not for profit, in the sense that you don't declare dividend. If you take Oxford, Cambridge, Harvard, MIT, they are all not-for-profit universities. You pay the fees, and they always have a surplus. but the money is plowed back into the university. Then what happens is the governments fund the students who go there also. So maybe we should have government universities, not-for-profit universities, which we can also help in some way, and then the other institutions which are for profit. But even all those, we want to make, we started this scheme where interest-free loans are given to the students so they can repay later.
Is there any other questions, guys, from your side?
Yeah, I have one question, sir. Sir, what do you think about printing such a huge amount of money by the central bank? Actually, will it actually facilitate the development of the country? So, what are the pros and cons of printing notes?
No, not at this time, because we are printing it in lieu of our revenue. If we don't improve our revenue, we have no future. I mean, basically, what we did from 2015 was to keep improving our revenue. And by 2017, in 2 years, we had a primary surplus, first time after 1950s. That's virtually 60 years. Well, you can't stabilize the economy. You're destabilizing the economy. Secondly, it's affecting your cost of living at this time because the rupee gets devalued. And when rupee is devalued, it affects cost of living, it affects every section. So this is what I call a desperate move. You have nothing else, so you do this. Either do this or sell the family silver. You are selling land and all. The lands in Colombo are very, are really not strategic. It's a core asset of the government. And when we started Port City, the Colombo Harbour and the government had an understanding that we will not sell land in Colombo for some time till they were able to sell the land off in Port City. Now, when you go to try and sell Chalmers Granary or down where the Air Force is, you're undercutting that agreement and you're bringing the prices of the Port City land down, which means that we also have about 30%. So we are just cutting our throat, nose to spite our face with that.
Any other questions you guys have?
Yes, I need a small clarification. How can we reduce the poverty?
We have not focused on job creation, and jobs must not be 30,000 rupees a month. People will expect 50, 60,000 minimum or more. So we have to get ready for that. We have to go for development and growth. If you don't go for growth, you can't get rid of poverty.
Please welcome Mr. Sujiva Rajapaksa, the chairman of People's Bank, which is one of the top-rated state-owned commercial bank in Sri Lanka. Dear sir, first of all, we would like to know about your experience as the chairman of a recognized bank in Sri Lanka.
Let me first at the outset thank each one of you for inviting me to probably spend about 30-40 minutes with you discussing various aspects. My experience in banking before I got into banking, of course, you know, I'm one of the very senior chartered accountants here in this country. And also I'm running a fairly large firm of chartered accountants called BDO, and I'm the managing partner. Apart from that, I am also at the moment wearing different hats as chairman of People's Leasing and board member of few listed companies, and also council member of your own, you know, the University of Sri Javadhanpura. Plus, there are so many things. So that's my overall, you know, why I give all this, not to boast myself, but at least for viewers to know about our experience and the background. Having said that, yes, banking industry is one of the very important industries to any economy. Of course, Sri Lanka is not exception. And then when I accepted this bank, it was one of the, as we are aware, one of the largest bank, and with you know, 734 branches, having about 8,500 staff, having about 2.2 trillion balance sheet. We are also very strong in cooperative sector because this People's Bank has been the form mainly to cater rural sector, cooperative sector. This was way back in 1961, and this was formed that was the main intention. But of course, over a period of time, there had been major transformation taken place, and that's we are very proud to say that a bank with the people. That is how People's Bank has been now transformed into one of the most vibrant bankers of the banking institutions here in Sri Lanka. So,
Yes, sir. Next, we would like to know about what strategies you have followed so far towards the success of your organization.
any organization, we need to have strategies. When you say strategies, it could be mainly for 5-year strategy, because that is we call strategic plan we prepare, and then every year we look at and see whether we need to change certain things. In any strategy, you have two different aspects. One is quantitative, the measurements. The other one is qualitative. So quantitative and qualitative, we have to pull together, and then you come out with a strategy. When you say strategy, we have to look at about what's going to be our vision. Where are we going to pitch our bank, say, the next 1 year or 5 years? For that, we generally have strategic planning sessions, day and night we discuss. Of course, we understand that we are also, like any other industries, we are also in a very competitive environment. And we would like to always look at our market share is increasing day by day, month by month, and year by year. So you need to understand that. Also, I would like to tell you, any institution would like to have return on their investment. Now, people have a misconception that bankers are making large amount of money, large amount midst of even these challenges, because they are making. Yes, they are making. That you need to understand why. There's a return on investment. But in our case, when I said that, when I took over, it was about 2.2 trillion balance sheet, but now it is 2.4 trillion, not billion, trillion balance sheet. At least if you have 1% return, you need to have 23 billion profit.
Yes, sir. In the context of whole country, as a key personality in the banking sector, what is the value addition of your organization towards the Sri Lankan economic development?
Oh, that is massive. That's what, there are so many folds. Now, one is, imagine when I said that there are 754 branches across the country. That itself is a huge value addition and service that we provide to the nation. In the meantime, you need to understand now, being a state-owned bank, we are also supposed to, we can't pick and choose industries, because we have to support every industry in this country. Especially, we cater to SMEs, small and medium, or micro, small and medium, MSMEs in this country, because that's a huge forte in our, the operations. We look at every aspects in those. Apart from that, we also finance for the state-owned enterprises like Petroleum Corporation, then Electricity Board, then Water Board, then Air Lanka. Then likewise, there are so many, apart from providing finance to the government.
What do you think about the prevailing situation of Sri Lankan economy?
Prevailing situation in Sri Lanka economy, now if you look at, it's not only Sri Lankan economy, I think you have to first look at large, the world economy. The world economy also, there's a huge impact. And economy, when you say economy, different people can interpret in a different way. How the spectacles that you wear, which color of spectacle that you would like to wear. But if you really look at as an independent person, we need to understand that economy is under stress. Economy is under stress. That is, there are no question about that. What is your productivity, and what is your growth? What is your the foreign reserves that you have? What is your total exports? What's your total import? And how are you, whether there's a surplus or the deficit. But as you are aware, we have been having issues from the beginning. There's a saying that, okay, even Lee Kuan Yew, Singapore the legendary Prime Minister, he was talking about that Singapore should become like Sri Lanka. But now it's totally the other way around. But purely because of this, the unnecessary expenditure that we have been spending without any return. We purely depend on foreign exchange earnings. How do you earn foreign exchange? Because Sri Lanka is very famous for apparel exports. Either it could be apparel exports or any other exports, plus remittances are our brothers and sisters who are working abroad and they remit this money, and tourism. I think those are the three main important sectors for Sri Lankan economy. But unfortunately, okay, if you take tourism is highly sensitive and vulnerable area. For a slightest thing, imagine if you have a small, let us say, bomb explosion in one part of some part of our country, the tourism is going to get affected by at least 50%. So these are, and also we had the Easter bombing attack and many more things happened. So as a result, that was because when it came to say COVID, now COVID hit us, without any mercy. That you need to understand. So our 5 billion, the income earner or the foreign exchange earner from tourism got, affected immediately, because then there were so many things, because no flights and countries were shut down and all that. In the meantime, there were a lot of, our sisters, brothers who are working abroad, they could not, some of the people were basically send them away. As a result, they could not remit money. In the meantime, tea and, those exports also got affected. Apparel industry, because now they could not export apparel because of the fact that some of the major economies, especially places like Europe and America, they also got affected. As a result, there was a huge decline in the demand of those aspects. So as a result, we also have we were having the foreign exchange earning issues that you need to understand. But the fact remains that in spite of all that, the government, in the meantime, because government decided to provide the maximum comfort to all the corporate sector, business people, and citizens in this country, because those are in large numbers. Imagine, because those incentives are without a proper return. Imagine now, for last year and a half, this pandemic, the amount of vaccines that Sri Lanka has imported is massive. Because now even my own bank, People's Bank, we would have opened LCs at least about 50-60 million US dollars, imagine. So there are no return on those investments. There are no return, because okay, you have to make sure that the lives are being saved. So as a result, government is compelled to do that. That is one part. The other part is, imagine the number of days shut down, lockdown. Imagine. So as a result, the economy got impacted very badly, severely. Always our exports have been less than imports. So when you have, when your exports are less than imports, means obviously there's an issue about the balance of payment. Another thing that I would like to clarify is, when you have exports, mean that obviously you have import, because value addition may not be that significant in some of the industries. If you take apparel industry, when you say 5 billion exports, quite obvious that at least 2 billion amount of the stuff will have to be imported to export that 5 billion. Sometimes people don't think about that. So as a result, anyway, that is one part. The other part is these exports also, we need to look at and see whether there is a gradual remittance of those export receipts to Sri Lanka. I can tell you some of the, because even today paper, I was just reading this Daily FT. Now the Daily FT paper also says that, there's a huge issue about, some of the exporters, they don't remit money to Sri Lanka within a reasonable period of time. In other words, you export and government expect within, let us say, 3 months, those export remittances should be brought into Sri Lanka, but sometimes it doesn't happen. So then what's going to happen? Then obviously there's an issue about the foreign currency, which we are crying, we are talking, we are, shouting about. So anyway, looking at last in August figures, I can tell you there's a gradual increase. It is very, I mean, it's a welcoming note, because we have exported quite a lot of stuff than imports. But again, the problem is now when you say imports also, there are different kind of imports. Say, if you are going to import goods for investment, then we should be happy. But unfortunately, what happens is most of the imports are for consumption. So when you are going to consume, what happens is, because there are no return on that. There are no return. So that you can't continue like this. So that is what I'm a very strong believer that every one of us will have to put the effort and soul together to resurrect this economy. Now, but economic growth. Now, earlier we were expecting economic growth is going to be negative or 2%, but now it says that economic growth is going to be about around 4%, which is, I think, again welcoming, because it's some many challenges. So that's how we look at. But at the moment, still, the economy is under stress. But not only Sri Lanka, any economy, but we are also having our own. I think government is taking a lot of effort to make sure that economy is going to be stabilized by the adopting various methods. Again, you are aware that we have a large amount of debts. These are foreign debts. These debts have been brought in, not only this government, every successive government, because for various reasons. That is because I told you that imports are, our expenditure is more and income is less. So then obviously you have to, even our own personal, we have to go to the bank or some lender and we have to borrow money. That's what government also have been doing it. Last, whatever the number of years, we have not defaulted any foreign currency loans. And in the meantime, you need to understand that country rating. Now there are rating agencies who rate countries based on certain fundamentals. And our country also have been, the downgraded. That is, that we need to understand. But of course, those will be basically temporary. But looking forward, I think we all will have to be positive in our economy midst of many challenges.
Yes, sir. As per your view, if the economy has downgraded, what was the root cause, or what went wrong in past?
If the economy has downgraded, what are the root causes? Yeah. The rating agencies are there to rate, because they don't do any other things. No, they have to rate countries or institutions. That's what they do. Even Sri Lanka, there are a couple of rating agencies. Right? What happens is they have their, like now in my case, I'm an accountant. So when we have certain ratios that we calculate ratios in our clients and businesses. Likewise, they also have they apply various ratios for the country. Say one would be the the net foreign reserves. When net foreign reserves are reducing, and when they look at and see, then we are in the red zone. We may not be able to honor our commitments. When the economy growth is, let us say, reduced, obviously that will be one of the the criteria. So likewise, there are so many things based on that only they do it. But overall, we understand when the economy is doing well, obviously, they will again increase triple C to, the triple B. So that's how it goes. And root causes are, I told you, one is our expenditure. So our consumption has to be reduced now. The capital investments, and sometimes, there may be unnecessary expenditure that is being done. Those will have to be rationalized. And efficiency. Now, efficiency of especially state-owned enterprises, I have a major issue about that. In the meantime, wastages are there, corruption also up to some extent. Those also will have to be eliminated. So those are the root causes, the why economy is not doing well.
Sir, if you become a leading policymaker of Sri Lanka, how would you think the Sri Lankan economy can be developed?
We have to seriously look at about our balance of payments, because of the fact that, you know, we are depending on few you know, the exports. We need to make sure that we have import substitutions, which is very, very important, and export oriented, you know, economy. And we need to develop these industries here in Sri Lanka, which is important. And say agriculture, you take, certainly, you know, we can develop agriculture, but then everyone will have to look at. Otherwise, if you look at the consumption goods that you bring, I mean, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, more than 50% of those consumption goods are for, you know, can be avoided if we can have a homegrown, you know, the solution. Another thing is, you also need to have foreign direct investments to any country. But Sri Lanka, unfortunately, we have not been able to attract large investors. But we get investors, but that is not enough. The government is now looking at, say, for instance, the government has planned to set up 5 technoparks. 5 technoparks in 5 different places, say Galle, Anuradhapura, Kandy, Kurunegala, and another one. So through that, they are going to create about 12,500 jobs. Totally a tech-savvy people could be accommodated, and the government has already engaged in discussion with people like Microsoft and so on and so forth. I think if they can come over here, I'm sure, you know, we will have Sri Lanka will be totally taken into a different era because of various inherited factors here in Sri Lanka. Say for slightest thing, you know, we go on strike. For slightest, you know, you can't develop a country like it. And if you want to have a, you know, the proper performance evaluation for government state-owned, you know, the employees, no, we'll never allow. So those kind of things also will have to be looked into if we want to develop the economy, which is very important.
How education system should change the development of country? Do you have any suggestions on that?
Of course,
Current
yeah,
education system in Sri Lanka?
more than me. If you ask my wife will give enough things, you know, because my 2 daughters are also educated, even you know, through this free education system. But education system has to be totally revamped, which is important because of the fact that, you know, now we need to look at how the other part of the world or the global, now we are talking about global village, but I can tell you, even now, I think O-level student will have to sit for 13 or some subjects. But I can't imagine, because then if you take the other, you know, the London syllabus, but it is totally different. But they cater to the global market, whereas we cater to the local market. But I am a firm believer that you have to relook at those things. Because another thing is, you need to have a student-centered learning method. Now what happens is teacher-centered. Teacher, you know, the study at home, and they come, she or he comes and then deliver. You know, it's a one way. No, it's not the other way. You must allow students to you know, take part actively. But those are things I think we need to relook at, because of the fact that we are competing with the other part of the world, which is important.
Sir, another thing I want to clarify. Can you explain a bit more about the efficiency of capital expenditures the government made so far?
Yeah, very good question. Now, that's what I said. When you know, you have to look at 2 ways. When you spend capital expenditure, there are certain cases you can't measure. Certain cases you can measure. I remember when I was the when I was the treasurer of Sri Lanka Cricket for about 6.5 years, and say when you are going to spend about couple of billion rupees on a ground, if you are looking at, right, I have spent 2 billion rupees, I need 5% return every year, it won't happen, because of the fact that, you know, now there is a future tour program organized by, the International Cricket Council. Based on that, we may have about maybe 1 or 2 touring, the teams for a year, or the other year it may be more. So those are all for infrastructure for the development of the country to compete with the international markets and community. But say if you take a highway you need, because highway, if you say that I have spent 25 billion US dollars for a highway, if you expect a return, say 5% return, that won't happen. But by having those highways, we must make sure that the development need to be taken back to those respective areas. That is very important. Say if you are going to have a highway from Colombo to Matara, so we'll have to develop Matara area, but it is yet to happen, because now from Colombo you can go to Matara within 1.5 hours. And now Kandy highway also will have the same thing. But the question is whether it is happening. If people are using highways only to go to pilgrimages or your normal tours, or to visit your the relatives and spend a couple of days there, no, that I think that won't give the return. And as a result, there are, if you say that is one part. The other part is, yes, if you take the electricity board, when you are going to set up a plant, obviously you can see that, okay, there's going to be tangible and intangible, the benefits. So, but overall, there are question marks whether we have really utilized those capex for the betterment of the country and the economy at large. That there are questions.
Any other questions? Hope you have no any other questions to ask. Thank you, sir. It's a great privilege to conduct and discuss on this topic and gain knowledge from such a resourceful person like you, and acceptance of our request and sparing bit of your time. And thank you so much, and have a nice day and stay safe.
Thank you very much. Before I conclude, I must tell you that we have educated through free education system. So what I'm going to tell you, ladies and gentlemen, is, make sure that you give something back to your country, which is very important. So please make sure that we work together to make sure that, this country is going to be prosper in future.
In an organization like us, we have a 5 years, we call it LRP, long range plan, that where we wanted to be, and then how we are going to really reach there. There's kind of a plan that we have laid down. So any government should have at least 15 to 20 years long range plan, that this is where we are going to take the country in next 20 years, 25 years. When the organization, it's the macro picture of a kind of organization like this. When you see the country, it's a macro picture of the MAS. So the things that we do here, there has to be a higher level. It has to be really happen at kind of a government level. I would say we lack some vision here, and so the strategies and the policies it changes every 5 years, and the government changes. So we lack kind of a national policy here, and the rules and regulations. Which is being really imposed are sometimes outdated, and then it lacks some practical approach.